Hey, Eric, how do you feel coming out of there with a point given your last month and despite leading with about 10 minutes to go?
Yeah, I'll say this is a difficult place to come and play for sure. They have a style that really suits the conditions here that makes it very tough, particularly given where we are at the moment, to come here and really assert yourselves on the game. So I felt that given that it panned out as we expected in terms of the balance of play, and we put in a really disciplined, workmanlike performance, and it resulted in a game that had very few chances either way, and one that I'm sure we could have won with the quality of a couple of the chances we had, but we leave content in one sense, but disappointed in that we weren't able to see the game out and weren't able to execute the really fine details that we needed to defending our box toward the end. So it's bittersweet in that sense because I think it's a really important point. I'm obviously incredibly pleased with the application of the players, their aggression, their intent to stop the run that we're on at the moment. So we take a lot from that. But again, it's probably one of those we could have won.
John, you can go ahead, and then you guys can just go back and forth from here on out.
Sounds good. In the first half, especially, it looked like Houston had about 3/4 of the possession. Was that a case where you were trying to control the game out of possession, as you've said before?
Yeah, I think it's we talked prior to the game about making sure that we are really thinking very intelligently as a collective as to when we can be aggressive and when against a team like that that plays in the way in which they play in this heat, you have to take your medicine and you have to defend your half really well. And we made, I would say, a good fist of it over the course of the first 15, 20 minutes. I felt they really took charge from that point onwards. We ended up making a change in how we defended our half, which I think helped but hindered in the sense that we were then a man light in trying to counter attack and trying to get really good pressure on the players in their first line as they built up. So we played a game that we don't necessarily want to play week after week, but I think it's in some senses, given the context, a very necessary game for us to come here and play, which is us making sure that we're really tight, really compact, really difficult to play through, and that when we can be, we're ruthless on the counter attack. And unfortunately, in the first half, we got the former, but probably not the latter, and we turned the ball over far too cheaply when we regained it, and that resulted in that share of the ball for sure. So that was something that in the second half we managed to strike far cleaner, that balance that we really wanted to, in terms of making sure that when we had the ball, if we weren't able to counter attack quickly, that we could connect some passes together and move the ball up the pitch really well as a unit. And I think particularly once Robin ended up playing in midfield toward the last stages of the game, that started to look very different. So yeah, we've got to learn from that, and that was a point that was made at the end of the game. We have to be a team that can do both, and when we have our chance to have our rhythm and get in our rhythm on the ball, we've really got to do so.
The goal you scored, the run, the finish, that's why Robin is an all-star?
Yeah, for sure. He's very good in front of goal, Robin, in those situations. I'll say we're a big set play threat. We unfortunately have got we're in that difficult position, that in some way incredible position of being the best team on attacking set plays, or certainly one of the top two or three, and one of the worst on defending set plays, which is a strange position to be in, and something that we've really got to improve on. And we got to make sure that we're really hot on the details and show the same conviction in our box as we do in the opposition's box in those situations, because unfortunately it's turned into a bit of an Achilles heel for us.
What was your view on Houston's goal? What went wrong on that one?
Yeah, I think our zonal players that are positioned to go and attack the ball probably drop a touch quick, too concerned with defending the goal and not concerned enough with making sure we get a good first contact and really good pressure on the ball in the box. The player that ultimately scores ends up slipping free of his marker, unfortunately, and that results in a goal. And we've seen over the course of the last few weeks and over the course of this season as a whole that we have to be on point in the box on defending set plays, and too often we lose concentration, lose focus, not enough conviction. But on on the flip side of that, we're an exceptional team on attacking set plays, and it's a strange one. I don't think you often find that combination. I think normally lacking in one typically leads lacking in another, leads to a side being, often it's the case that it's the root of it is a lack of size, a lack of aggression, a lack of conviction in both boxes. But for some reason, we're very good in the opposition's box, and we really need to improve in ours.
You moved Sang Bin back to that wing back spot. What was the thinking on that, and how did it work out, do you think?
Well, obviously, we're really struggling at the moment for a natural right back, which makes it very difficult, if not impossible, to defend in a back four. So we obviously try and use Sang Bin in a certain way with the ball, but he ends up defending largely as a fullback when, particularly against an opposition that plays with their wide left pinned to the touchline right on the last line. It's very difficult to then get Sang Bin defending much higher up than he found himself. But he certainly has the physical qualities to deal with those 1v1 situations well. And as much as he is probably loathed to play in that position because he's a front player, he wants to be on the last line often, he wants to be in good positions on the counter attack. We really need him to do that for us at the moment. And I've really got to give him credit for the way he turns his hand to a role that he needs to do for the team.
You've had sort of a late lead slip away again. Do you have any criticism of your team sort of late game defending or late game setup where it seems like they're bunkering in a little bit?
I don't, because it's a cumulative effect of the last 7-8 games that we've played with very few players and lots of minutes spread across few players. And I think we've done some objective analysis on that this week, and we are worse off than any other MLS team in that sense. We've had more minutes spread across the fewest players over this period, and that obviously takes its toll. Players are right at their physical limit, and we can only make so many changes from the bench. We've only been able to make so many changes. That will now change as we approach a window and we welcome the last couple of pieces back from the Copa America. So I'm hoping that we can move past that, and it doesn't take its toll for too much longer. But of course, I can push the players to be better at the end of the games, and I can be critical, and they can be critical of themselves. But there is context to that, so there's an element of needing to show them the empathy that I feel they need to feel from the staff, because they are in a difficult situation. They've been put in a difficult situation. So those two are sort of inextricably linked, I would say.
You mentioned Canada's out tonight. How soon can you get both those guys back and in the 11?
Well, I'm not sure of the specifics, but as soon as possible, for sure, they'll be back with us and available for midweek.
You had Carlos Harvey starting at center back tonight. What did you think of his performance there?
Yeah, I think to an extent we're looking from Carlos for what we ended up developing in Coven Arriaga, a centre-back with the qualities of a midfield player that can help us be cleaner in how we bring the ball out from the back and how composed we are across the back three. And for sure, he'll find himself in some uncomfortable positions defensively. But I thought he handled himself really, really, really well tonight. And someone that I hope can grow into being a really versatile player for us. Obviously, he pre-Copa America broke his way into the team and showed some really positive steps playing as a 6, and for sure, having done so a little bit for Panama, he can contribute to our personnel and our options across that back line. So I think it was a really good step, and I'm really pleased with it.
Does England have your allegiance tomorrow?
I've said previously, I'm definitely not a Welsh guy that is anti-England in any way. I'm fortunate to have had the opportunity to work with a number of the players that will play in that game tomorrow, and I sort of wish them nothing but the best, because they're all phenomenal guys and sort of deserve every success that hopefully comes their way.
Time for a couple more.
It looked like Joseph Rosales was limping a little bit when he came out of the game. Has he picked up an injury?
No, I think he's not. It's cramp, it's tiredness. Obviously, Joe is an explosive player that covers a lot of ground, and he's been asked to do that over more minutes than we would have liked in the last month or so. So that is collateral damage on the back of a tough situation, of course, squad wise. So I think you haven't, of course, seen the same impact from Joe as you did in the first few months of the season. But I'm sure that will come back once we can be a bit more strategic with how we use players and when we use players.
You said you had heard about playing in Houston. How did the conditions, did they affect the game at all?
It's tough. I mean, they're of course more acclimatized to it than we were, but I would say it's tough conditions for both teams. Very humid, very difficult, I think, to really find changes of rhythm to how you press and find those periods where you can be really aggressive, because I think the players feel like they're at their limit physically for a lot of the game. Houston obviously playing away where they connect lots of players close to the ball, lots of short passes, really slow rhythm to the game. And that is for sure as a consequence of the conditions here. I mean, that way of playing really suits them here. And for us, it led to a certain game that I think, played relatively well. I think the regret we would have, not to repeat myself, not to labour the point, is that we didn't use the ball well enough. We didn't have our share of it for long enough. So, but as I say, context of that is it's very sticky here, very hot, and the players need to show real composure, real personality to flick between those two mentalities, with and without the ball.
All right, John, Jerry, thanks for spending your Saturday night with us, and Eric, safe travels home.
Thanks, guys. Speak soon.
Thank you.